Alright guys, welcome to another CAD tutorial. We have worked on, in class, a 3D vase in SketchUp. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way through the same exact procedure that we did in class so that you have a chance to watch through this and follow along at your own pace. Okay? I might add a couple tricks in here. We came across a couple issues as we were going through it, remembering that SketchUp is generally used for architectural type drawings. And so because we're working in the scale of like a millimeter, because we're going to be 3D printing, it actually starts to struggle with rendering some of those shapes down at small levels. So I'm going to add a couple tricks here that I might not have talked about in class, hoping to fix any major issues that we came across. All right, so what you're taking a look at is just a normal template that I opened. They always add a person so you can kind of have a scale to work with. So if we're creating a vase, we know that we're going to be working pretty small down here. But I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm actually not going to use this template. I'm going to change my templates because this might be a trick that might be useful moving forward. So I'm going to go up top to my File menu. I'm going to go down to New from Template. This brings up the dialog box that allows me to choose a template. So there we go. Wait for a second. Now, I've been working in millimeters. I was doing it in the 3D printing in inches or millimeters down here. I am going to do something a little bit different. Because SketchUp works better at larger scales, I'm actually going to work in meters and pretend in my head that everything's in millimeters, which is kind of a weird way and a weird request of me to make for you. But then I'm working 1,000 times bigger because there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter, right? And so I'm going to work on that scale. And then at the end, before I export it for 3D printing or anything like that, I'm going to remember to scale it down by 1,000. Okay, I feel like this is a better option. In some of the classes, I recommended taking just the component that's not working and scaling it up and then scaling it right back down. The issue with that is you have trouble like putting it back in the exact location and things like that. So I'm hoping that this method maybe makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to pick my meters template. It looks very much similar. And I'm going to work in the world of meters, pretending that I'm doing millimeters. So I'm going to get rid of her. And I'm going to reorient myself a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw my drawing plane. Like we've done this before, where in SketchUp you don't get to pick a surface to draw on. And so sometimes it's very difficult to draw freeform. And so what I'm going to do is draw a rectangle in order to create a drawing surface. I could use the pencil tool. Often when you use the pencil tool, it's very easy to follow the axes. So like I can follow the red axes out here. I can follow the blue axes here. It's easy to follow blue, but follow red. I can follow blue, right? It turns black when I'm not along an axis. I can follow green. So I can draw my rectangle this way if I prefer. And that's often a way that I do it. Another way to do it is to actually draw a rectangle. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. It may seem difficult to find the right direction, so I'm trying to draw a vertical plane here. It seems kind of difficult. So sometimes if you change your angle, it helps. But the other way is to use your arrow keys. So I'm going to use my arrow key and press left. That locks my orientation on the green plane. If I press up, it locks it to the blue plane. Press right, it locks it to the red plane. So I'm going to go back to left and draw my rectangle. So now that I have this moving, I'm going to go ahead and draw it to be about the dimensions that I want for my vase. It just gives me a good idea about how big the vase should be. So I'm going to make my vase probably 300 millimeters. And again, even though if you look down bottom in the corner of this, way down here, it says meters. But I'm ignoring the fact that it's meters. I'm pretending it's in millimeters, right? So later I can divide, or I can scale it down by 1,000. So here I'm going to type in 300, comma, and then let's make my vase about 20 centimeters, so 200 wide, but I'm only going to do half of it because I'm going to take just half the profile. That's what I'm drawing here. So I'm going to make mine 100 wide. All right, let's zoom out because this is much bigger now, right? Because we're doing this in meters. So what you can see here is that I wrote my dimensions backwards. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and type and I didn't click on anything, so I'm going to type 100, comma 300, change the dimensions the other direction. And because I didn't click off, I can keep changing these dimensions. That's the cool feature about SketchUp, is I can keep changing them as long as I don't click off and try to create something else or change my tool. So good, that's standing upright. Now we have 100 by 300, and I can orbit around and see this from a straight-on view. All right, so now I get to draw my vase. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a profile of the vase, a view of it from the side. And I'm only going to do half a profile because we're using the idea of radial symmetry, where I'm going to take this and move it around in a circle to create the 3D object. Okay, so what I want here is I want a base. I already have a line for the base. I'm going to go ahead and use the top of this as the line to the top, and then I'm going to create the rest of the geometry. So I'm going to use the pencil tool to come off of here because I want a nice angled top to my vase. So there's the top. Good. Now I'm going to use my semicircle tool. When I use this tool here, what I'm looking for is a nice blue line. That means it comes off of, or this curve is tangent to the straight line that comes that I attached it to up here. If I don't do the blue, it'll leave a little bit of a point there. And maybe you like that effect. I'm going to do a nice smooth curve coming off of there. You can kind of choose whichever one you wish. So I'm going to find the blue, click. And the same is true for the rest of these. When I first come off, you'll see that it's automatically blue. And when I land this point, if I move, it'll change it off of being tangent to the last line. So I'm gonna find the blue again, drop it, and this time when I do it, I'm actually going to, oh, it goes outside. I'm okay with it going outside a little bit. That's not a problem. I'm actually going to click twice so that I don't have to find the blue again. Click once, click twice, and then the bottom. I want the bottom to kind of be funky, so I'm going to angle this out like that. Now I don't need all these other pieces, so I'm going to go ahead and erase all the extra lines just so that I have a nice profile of my vase ready to go. So there's my profile. Profile of my vase ready for me to create a 3D object from. Now we've talked about this before. There's a bunch of different ways to create 3D objects. The most standard way is the push-pull tool here. I can push it, pull it to create 3D geometry. This one works in a lot of cases. In my case, I don't want to use this because I want to create this object with radial symmetry down around a circle. So I'm not going to use this, but that is a tool to use. I can also use, the next one is Follow Me tool. I am going to use the Follow Me tool, but there's a bunch of ways you can use this. Follow Me tool basically follows a path. So here's a path, for example. There's a line. I'm going to use the Follow Me tool, click on the profile, and that allows me to extrude it along a direction. So this is a great way to create molding or things like that in an architectural drawing. And there we go. We've created this nice curved or zigzag shape of my profile. Again, that's not what I'm looking for, but I am going to use that same tool. I just want this to follow a circular path. So I need to draw a circle. Go up and grab my circle tool. I'm going to pick the same center point as my vase because that's what I want to revolve it around, right? That center point. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the blue plane here. If I messed it up and it's like green or I can't figure it out, remember using your arrow keys, will help you define a plane and then it will stick to that. So now I'm on the blue plane. Doesn't matter how big I draw this. In this case, because it's just following the path. What you'll see is that I'm going to draw it out here so you can see the facets. You see how there are facets? SketchUp does this thing where instead of creating curves, it makes polylines where the curves are made up of small segments. What this will do is it'll actually make my vase have facets too, and so it won't look super smooth. So what I want to do in this case, and this is kind of a technique that you can use, is I can divide this line up into more pieces, more segments. So I'm going to click the outer line of my circle. You can see that it's highlighted now. Now I'm going to right click on it and it will bring up a dialog box and I can do a bunch of things here. You guys have probably seen this before. I can explode the curve. That means that all those segments when I select will only select one at a time. It's kind of frustrating. So here, actually let me show you. Explode the curve. Now when I select the outer rim, only that one little line gets selected, which is really frustrating. But the thing I could do, let me show you real quick. I'm gonna try to select all of them. Oh, actually, select all of them. I can double click. Oh, triple click, and then I don't want the middle, so I'm gonna hit Shift and click on the middle. So now the middle isn't selected, but the outside edges are, and I can put them all back together as one big entity by right-clicking on it again and going down to Weld the Edges. That's a useful tool because sometimes your specific lines are segments and you can't select the whole thing at once and it gets frustrating. So you can weld edges, and now you'll watch if I click off and I click back on again, the whole thing gets selected, which is really useful. All right, so now I had said this before, is I want to make sure that this is divided into more segments to make it a smoother curve. So I'm going to right click and go down to Entity Info, and that brings up my dialog box about the information, and it'll tell me all this information about it. Now, because I exploded the curve, it's not telling me the information for the circle. It doesn't see it as a circle anymore. So real quick, I'm going to undo what I did to get back to the circle that I created. The point is, when I exploded it, it made it no longer a circle. It made it just a bunch of different lines, and even welding the edges, it didn't define it as a circle anymore. So now I've gone back, I undid my exploding and everything like that. So now when I first drew it, if I had selected the edges and said Entity Info, you'll see that it actually shows that it has a radius, has a number of segments here, a circumference, because it sees it as the circle that I drew. See, it even says circle instead of just an object, okay? But here, the segments part of the dialog box allows me to edit this. I can edit the other things as well, which is kind of cool. I can edit this segment into, I'm going to double it. It just makes it easiest for the computer to render by dividing each of those segments in half. So now there are 48 different segments, and you can see that this is a much smoother curve to go around. This is one of those things that if you did when it was really small, it might have trouble because it can't render really small segments. So now it's nice and smooth, and I have a path for us to use the Follow Me tool around. Now what you saw before when I did the Follow Me tool, you saw that I clicked on the tool, clicked on the profile, and tried to follow the zigzag. Do you remember me doing that? Well, it's kind of frustrating and difficult to do sometimes if the geometry is a little bit more complicated. So an easier way to do this, to use this tool, is to select the path first. So I'm going to select the outer rim of my circle because that's the path I want this to follow, the profile to follow. Then I select the tool, so the path, then the tool, and you'll see that the path is no longer selected. It is deselected now. And so I selected the path, then the tool. Now I select my profile, and the computer will do the act for me. So now I don't have to follow the outside edge perfectly. This is really useful, especially if you're trying to do like a path that gets obstructed by something else. It goes behind something, and you have to change your view and all that stuff is really frustrating. So if you select the path first, then Follow Me, then the profile, the computer will do it for you. So there is my profile, my vase. I feel pretty good about it, except it's not hollow, right? This is a big solid object, which is a problem. So I don't have a hollowing out tool. There are plugins in the extension warehouse that you could probably find that might help do this, but we want to create this geometry with a hollow, or as a shell, as a vase would be in the first place. So I'm going to undo, Control Z, and I'm just going to come back to here. I need to make this a shell instead of the whole profile of the vase. I just want to have the outer edge of the vase. The best way to do it is to use my offset tool. The offset tool is right under the Follow Me tool. This allows me to pick the outside edge, click to start, and then bring it in a certain distance. Now I can type in how far I want it to come in. Say I want it to come in I don't know, 4 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 4. Oh, I don't want to go out. I want to come in. So I want to leave my mouse right there. Type in 4, press enter. And then I've created this nice thin shell all the way around. Okay. Now I don't want the top part of the shell because that would then keep the vase with a lid on it, and I don't want that. I want to have this be hollow. So what I need to do is erase those lines. The problem is if I erase these lines like this, it knocks out the entire profile. So before I erase the lines, I'm going to close in the part of the profile that I want. I want the vase to come up like this, and end up top here, right? And I only want this outer portion. So now I can erase the inner portion. But I got to do the same thing down bottom. Take a look. Or if I erase this part going up the middle, this will all disappear. So I got to draw a line across here so that I can keep the bottom portion. So let me go ahead and erase and show you. Erase that, and what you'll see is I get this outer portion is the only part that I need. Okay, so let's go back up top. There's an extra couple lines here I'm going to get rid of. And now you see, instead of the profile of the entire vase, I'm only getting a profile of the shell of the vase that I want. I want to make sure that this comes all the way to the middle, because as I revolve it around this blue axis, we want to make sure that it creates a full bottom. If I ended this way over here, it would create a hole in that space. So we don't want that. All right, now I do my follow me tool. Remember the new technique? Use select, and some of you guys haven't been using keyboard shortcuts, but it's really easy if we start using keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to start doing that. So spacebar gives me my select tool. Now I select the outer edge of my circle. That's the path. I select the tool, follow me. Then I go in and select the profile of the vase, and the computer will render it for me. And there it is. You can see all the way down in there. That's awesome. So now I don't need this circle on the bottom. I can go ahead and erase it just by hitting the outside edge. Now it's gone. Here's the one issue, is SketchUp didn't create a base to this. As I created the circle and erased the other circle, it left the bottom of the vase not hollow, but it left the face off of there. Well, I can heal this really quickly by simply drawing a line across that surface. This is a flat plane, right? So I can just draw a line. It doesn't actually matter where I draw the line, as long as I'm not drawing it to, as long as I draw it along the bottom plane. If I draw it up to here, or up in here, it won't create a surface. So if I draw across, SketchUp will know that I wanted a surface there, and then I can go ahead and E for erase, and I can erase that line. Sweet. So now I have a complete body. There's no holes in it, which is good, because then I can use it. I can 3D print it, and I can use it for other reasons, which I'll show you later. The one issue here, and we talked about this in class, is that it's gray. When we go to 3D print this, the 3D printing software will see gray as the interior of the material or of the object. And I don't mean like inside the vase. I mean like deep inside here. Like, let me hide this. I'm going to go right click on that and say hide. I mean like down in here, the places that the air shouldn't touch. That should be the gray surface, and the outside should be white. So I'm going to undo that so I can bring back my rim. So to do that, and you should do this, this is good procedure. Anytime you see a gray outside surface of your body, you want to change it over right away, because if you start creating more geometry and other parts are white and some parts are gray, it's going to be really hard to change some and not all of them. It's much easier when it's all gray like this to change it over. So to do it, I'm going to select the whole object, either with a window select or triple click. Even though it looks a little different, everything's selected, it still works. Right click and go down to reverse faces. This just takes each face and reverses it. Let me show you what it does. So there, now it's white, and I'll show you what it does. Let me create a rectangle here. What you'll see is the rectangle that I drew is gray, but the other side is white. So each face is going to have a gray side and a white side. So if I extrude this by using the push-pull tool, I'm happy with this because it's white on the outside, right? But on the inside, let me erase this. You can see that it's all gray on the inside. Anywhere that you can see gray is a problem. That means the object that means that air can get in there, and that's a problem when it's trying to create the geometry for 3D printing, because it will try to create a surface for you. So for example, say I wanted to create this, a box to print. If I try to print this, well, the sides are infinitely thin. There's no depth to them. And the computer will see, or the 3D printing software will see the gray, and it will try to enclose that. So it'll actually probably add a surface right across the top here to make a cube instead of a box. So if I wanted to make a box, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but if I wanted to create a box, I would do offset by some little small amount, use the P for push tool, and I wouldn't want to go all the way down to the bottom. I want to go near the bottom, so I'm actually going to hover over the side here and not go all the way to the bottom. So now I have thickness on all the sides. I have thickness on the bottom, which I can show you. Let me hide this. You can see that I have thickness down here too. The key here is that there's thickness on all the sides, and I'm only looking at white surfaces. Okay, so that's why we did it. Let me go ahead and select this whole thing, triple click, right click, erase, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we're back to our vase. This vase I'm going to want to be able to hide and bring back or move, and so the best way to do that is to make it a group, because if I make it a group, it won't naturally attach itself to any other geometry. Remember that SketchUp is kind of a sticky geometry type CAD program where anything that you draw and touch to each other will end up sticking unless it's grouped independent of everything else. So that's what I'm going to do. Triple click to get the whole vase or window select, right click and go down to make a group. Alright, so now I've grouped this. I can tell it's grouped because it creates this big bounding box on the outside. I click off, I click back on, I see the whole thing. That's fantastic. Okay. Step number 2. I want to create a handle for this. So what I need to do is I want to draw another vertical plane to draw on, right? Another rectangle that I can draw on so that I'm not drawing in midair. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool or pencil tool, it's up to you. I'm going to start at the origin again, just makes my life easier to center everything. I'm going to try to draw this. Oh, I'm getting only the blue. What's the trick for trying to get it back? Oh, there's the green. So I can change my orientation to find it, or I can use my arrow keys. So I'm going to use the left arrow key. That allowed me to get to green. My right arrow key again was red. Remember, you can change it. So here we go. I'm just going to draw it big enough that it extends outside the vase so that I can go ahead and draw my handle. All right, so the vase is kind of in the way. So I'm going to spacebar to select tool, click on the vase, right click and go down to hide. I can get this back, so don't worry. Hide it so that I can actually see this to draw on. So the one issue, now that I've hidden the vase, is I can't tell where my handle is going to be on the vase. I could try to remember, but that's a pain. So what I would like to do is bring in that profile of the vase back to this sketch. Now, when I used that profile, that shell profile, to do the follow me tool and create the vase, SketchUp doesn't remember the old thing. It doesn't keep it. So what we have to do is bring it back somehow. So what I'm going to do is bring my vase back. Up under File, I can go down to, oh, I lied, to Edit, and go down to Unhide, and I can unhide the last thing that I hid or all the things that I've hidden so far. If you want to remember the keyboard shortcut, it is Shift Command E. Shift is the up arrow. Command on a Mac. This is a Mac. Is the little, I don't even know what you call that symbol, and then the E. All right. So I'm going to bring it back. Shift Command E. There's my vase. It's back. What I want to do is use my awesome intersect command to get the vase to intersect with the drawing plane so that it creates geometry along that intersection. It creates lines along that intersection. So I'm going to select the object that I want to get the lines on, which is the rectangle. I'm going to right click on it and go down to Intersect Faces with the model. Okay. So now it's intersecting any faces that hit each other, and it'll create geometry there. And you can see, if you look in close now, there is actually a line along there. And if I hide my vase, click on the vase, right click, go down to hide. Now I get that profile back from the vase, which is exactly what I want here. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw my vase profile. Now I'm going to do two things here. I'm still going to use a follow me tool, which means I need two parts. I need a profile, which is kind of, you think of it as the cross-sectional shape of the handle. So like if I did like a hose, like a garden hose, the cross-sectional shape would just be a circle, right? If I did like the handle on a railing going up a staircase, maybe the shape is more of an oval. But I can create a really ornate profile shape if I want. And then I also need a path for it to follow. Right now we're doing the path for it to follow. Because I need the profile to touch the path to use it in a way that's useful, I'm actually going to draw my path all the way to the center line, axis line here, just so that I can then use that center line to draw my profile, and it will be a nice smooth path for me to follow. The other thing is, it's really hard to get the handle to attach to the outside of the vase perfectly. So I'm actually going to use the vase to carve the handle after I make it, so it has a perfect transition from the vase to the handle. And I can kind of show you this in a little bit later why. So I'm going to start by drawing. I'm going to use my my 2-point circle tool. I'm going to start at the middle. I'm going to work my way out to about here. I don't need this first curve to be very big, so I'm just going to have it be a slight curve. Just a slight curve. Then I'm going to draw from here, and I'm going to try to maintain a blue line here. That just allows my handle to have a smooth curve. If you want to try to do it with points or edges, you can. Sometimes SketchUp has trouble rendering those if you have a path that has a bunch of corners and things like that. So in my case, I'm going to try to keep it nice and smooth. So let me zoom back out so I can see my vase a little bit better. I'm going to come to here, double click, good, start again, and bring it back in. I'm going to end inside the vase somewhere like that. Awesome. So mine's a pretty plain one. You can create kind of swoops and turns in here if you want to. It's up to you how ornate you want yours to be. I want mine to be a pretty plain one. So now what I want to do is erase everything except my line, my path. Now what's annoying here is these are all line segments, and so it might be difficult to erase everything, and it'll take forever. So here's a trick on how to erase everything but the line pretty fast. I'm going to erase anything that touches the line. So ones like this end up erasing a lot. Ones like this, that's pretty big too. These are smaller, right? So now I've done everything there. Same thing down here. Anything that's right next to it, I'm going to erase. Now, everything else is pretty closely attached. So what I can do is spacebar for select, triple click on one of these, and you'll see that anything that's attached to it now is selected, and I can just press delete. There's a couple other places that need it, so triple click here, delete, triple click here, delete, and it looks like there's one more spot up there that I can get rid of. That's a little faster than trying to erase every line segment. So now, what you'll see is if I select the handle, each segment is separate. Just to make my life easier, and before I bring anything else back, I'm going to select the whole thing and to do the weld command. So I right click on it, go down to weld edges. This just makes this one line so that when I click off and I click back on it again, it selects the whole thing all together, which is fantastic. The next thing I need is the profile for the vase. The profile is, remember, the shape that when I grab onto the handle, the shape that the handle takes. So to do this, I want to be able to do it in a perpendicular plane to the handle. So I'm going to grab my circle tool, and I'm going to try to draw a circle right on the end of this. Again, it's defaulting on the blue plane, so I'm going to use my arrow keys. Red, there we go, the red one is the one I want. So I use the right key to find the red arrow. Click, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit to make sure I don't make my handle too big. I kind of want to see generally the shape I want to take. There we go, I feel pretty good about that. Now I'm going to add some embellishments to mine, just to kind of make it seem a little bit smoother. Again, I can do that technique where I click on the outside edge and I smooth out by right-clicking. So I can click, say, Entity Info, and change the number of segments if I want. But I'm going to do some other modifications here. So I'm going to click, I'm going to add like a thumb groove in the top of mine. I'm going to add, I think the bottom I want to be a little bit less round. So I'm going to start here maybe. And go to there. Nice. All right, so there's my shape that I want to use. And I'm going to bring it along the whole profile, or I'm sorry, that profile along the whole path. So I'm going to use the Follow Me tool again. Here we go. Select the path first. Ooh, I need to hit spacebar to hit the select tool. Select the path first. There we go. Now I select the Follow Me tool. Then I go back and select the profile, and it will pull it along the entire path. All right. There we go. Now I want to make sure that this is a white surface, so I'm going to select the whole thing, right click, reverse the faces. Now I can right click again and make it a group. Awesome. So I have my handle. I can bring my vase back, unhide my vase. Again, to unhide it, you go up to the edit, down to unhide, or you can use this keyboard shortcut of Shift Command E on a Mac. You can find the shortcut for the keyboard for a PC right here. It should say it for a PC. And there's my vase handle. Pretty straightforward, pretty basic. Okay. What you'll notice though is that I started it on the inside and I ended it, if you can see the bottom one, also goes inside way down there. Right? So that's a problem. We want to get rid of that. But the reason I did it is if you look at this surface here, let me zoom in real close. That's not just a flat cut, right? So if I had brought this in and ended it right on the surface, it would actually leave gaps there because this is a round surface that I'm trying to attach it to. But what I can do is I can use the vase to carve it perfectly in that spot, which is kind of a neat method. Okay. So, but to carve things, I have to make sure that these have no gaps in it. These bodies have no holes in them. There's no places that there are stray edges or things like that. So to check it, I'm going to click on my vase and right click and say Entity Info. And what we're looking for is for it to say a solid group. So in this case, my vase is a solid group. Let's click on the handle and see what it has to say. It also says a solid group, which is what I'm looking for. If there are any parts of it that are not solid, we could have a problem. And so sometimes that happens if your curve or the path that you drew isn't really straight. It happens a lot more often if we're doing this really small, like in the millimeter range, which is again why I did this so big in the meter scale. The other technique, and I kind of showed some people this in class, is that there is a tool called in the extension warehouse, and actually let me show it to you first. Go up to Window, down to Extension Warehouse, and this is going to bring up a bunch of different extensions. And extensions are just it's just software that you can add on to your program that adds more functionality. So if we look down here, this Solid Inspector 2 is a really useful one to install. That adds functionality in that it will take a look at your group and decide if it's a solid group, and if it's not, it can fix some things. Some things it can't fix, other things it can. I'm going to press Escape to get out of this. Oh, I'm just going to change my screen, come back to here. Okay, so now I get to, because these are complete solid groups, both of them are, I can use them to as tools to carve each other out. So I could use like the handle to carve a hole in there, or I could use the vase to chop off the handle, which is exactly what I'm going to do here. So I've added, you can take a look at my toolbar up top. I've added a bunch of tools here that I find useful, and I took out any of the extra tools that are already on the large tool set, because I always have the large tool set open. So to do that, I can either right click on the toolbar and go down to Customize Toolbar, or I can go to View and go down to Customize Toolbar. Either one works, and it brings up my customizing tool set here. I have all kinds of tools. The ones I'm going to bring up for this case sit right here in the middle. Outer shell, intersect, union, subtract, trim, split. I'm going to bring those up and put them up top. To do it, you just click it and drag it up and drop it in. That's how you do it. I've already done mine, so I don't need to do it anymore. Okay? And if you don't want something that's up here, you take it and bring it down, and it will disappear. Okay? So I've also added some viewpoints, so like I can look at the top or front or side view as well. I've added those as well because they don't exist on the large tool set. All right, I'm going to say done. Go back to here. So we could talk a little bit about what each of these things does. If you look at the icon, it actually is pretty useful to tell what each thing does. So one of them is union, one of them is outer shell, intersect, subtract, trim, split. They all do kind of different things, and you can test them out if you want. The split, for example, uses the two objects and it creates a third object wherever they intersect. So that's kind of like those Venn diagram things where you have the two circles that come together and where what's true about both of them is its own kind of category. Well, in this case, it's the same where the area or the volume that is common between them becomes a third entity. Then you can also do trim. That's the one that we're going to use, where you use one object as the tool and it just carves out part of the other object, but then you keep both objects. This one, subtract, does the same thing where it takes one object and carves out part of another object, but then it deletes the original tool. So that one you have to make sure that you only use when the thing you create to carve out you don't mind getting rid of. In this case, we don't want to use that because that would make the vase disappear. And then I'll let you kind of play around with the other ones they create. So for example, I'll go ahead and say it. The intersect only keeps the place where they both, where the volume where they both overlap. The outer shell basically joins the two objects, but with no interior geometry. So it just uses an outer shell and creates one object from that. And then the union tool puts the both bodies together, but it keeps all interior parts to it. So say you were designing like, I don't know, a house or something like that, and you want to keep all the interior components. You don't want to have just the outer shell created, which would be the tool next to it, the outer shell command. All right, so we're going to use the trim tool. I'm going to make sure nothing's selected to start. Trim tool, go ahead and select it. And what I can read right down bottom, it says select first solid. Now, what it should say is select the tool, because one thing is going to carve out of the other thing, and you always select the tool first and then the object second. So we're going to select the tool. In this case, the tool is the vase. And if you click on this and it doesn't work, it means it's not a solid group. It won't end up clicking, and you'll see the little red symbol with a slash through it as you try to click on it. It won't work. Now it says select the second solid. Now this is the object that you want to actually be affected. So this is the handle that I'm selecting as the second one. It's going to think for a second. I have the little spinning rainbow wheel. Waiting. All right, so it's done. It doesn't look like anything happened, right? You're not going to necessarily see anything until I hide the vase. So I'm going to press spacebar for select just the vase, and I'm going to hide it. And what you'll see happens here is that it carved out my the shell part of the vase, carved out spots in my handle. You'll still see the line that goes through. That was the path that we created. But now I can get rid of those interior parts. So let's select this, double click to get into the group to edit it. Now I come to the top part of the handle, triple click to select it all, delete it. Go down here, triple click, delete it, select outside. And now I can get rid of the path too. I don't really need that path anymore. And now I have a handle that is trimmed to fit perfectly on the vase. Take a look at the end of this. This is not a flat cut, which is why we did it this way, because it's kind of complex and we never would have been able to have this mesh perfectly with the vase. So now let me turn the vase back on, unhide the vase, and you'll see that it fits perfectly here without any gaps. It's hard for me to show all of it, but there's no gaps there, which is exactly what I want. There also is no holes. Let me hide the handle. There's no holes in the vase. Later, if I go to 3D print this, I want to merge all of these pieces together, and I don't want any holes in the vase. All right. Great. There's my handle. All right. Next step. We are going to get this handle to repeat itself around the vase. Earlier in the year, we talked about making copies of things. You can always do the traditional English paper method of copying a paragraph, Command-C, Command-V kind of thing. But the easier way, and maybe it's not easier, but the preferred way in order to create multiple copies in the exact number that I want is to use the move tool. Remember using the move tool, so I'm going to grab the move tool, and if I start to move this, if I tap my option key, and I think it's the control on a PC, I'm not positive, you're going to have to play around with it, it actually moves a copy. And you can see the little plus sign show up on my cursor when I do that. So if I move a copy, say I bring it to here, and I drop it, now before I can move my mouse, it's fine, but before I click off of anything, or if I click on a new tool, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and type in times 3, for example. And you'll see it actually makes multiple copies. But when I do times, it makes multiple copies outside of the original. So there was the original, and it added 2 more out there. It made 3 total copies. I could instead put them in between by saying divided by 3. Now it makes 3 total copies, including the original, but spaces in between them 2 other ones. And I can keep changing this no matter how many times I want, as long as I don't click off. So I'm going to go ahead and say divided by 5. Ooh, now there's a ton. Or I could say times 10. And it keeps the same spacing, if I say times, as the original distance away. All right, so I'm going to undo this because I actually don't want them to go in a linear kind of pattern. I want them to go in a circular pattern. And so instead of using the move tool, I'm going to use this other tool, which is the rotate tool. Now, before I do it, I'm going to get rid of the vase. The vase is just kind of in my way, so I'm going to hide it. And now I'm going to use this rotate tool. The rotate tool is interesting. What you have to do is you have to select first the axis of rotation. That's the center point for your circle that you're going to rotate things around. And so I can pick along the blue axis if I want, and that's what I'm going to end up doing. So I'm going to pick along the blue axis. I have to select my handle first. I didn't select it. So I'm going to press spacebar, select the handle. Now go get the rotate. Now I can select anywhere I want along here. It doesn't matter. I can actually select way down here because it's all along the same axis. Okay, so I'm going to select along here. Oh, I missed. So now I'm going to press escape so I can do it again. Select the origin, for example. The second place you click is where you grab the object from. And the truth is I can grab it. I can grab the ground over here and it will still move the object. It doesn't really matter in this case where I grab it. What matters is if I'm doing this and I want to move, like, say, this exact point to attach to another point, then I want to make sure where I grab it from is the exact spot that I want to grab it from. So in this case, it doesn't really matter. So again, the pivot point, and then I can grab it anywhere I want, or just grab out along the red axis, that's fine. So click out here, and now I'm going to start to move this. Well, I don't want to move the actual object, I want to move a copy, right? So again, press Option. It adds a little plus sign to my cursor symbol. And now I'm moving a copy. Take a look down bottom corner here. In the right corner, you can see that it moves through an angle. So I could type in an angle if I wanted to. And say I wanted 3 of these handles. I could type in 120 degrees, put one handle there, and then I could do it again, type in 240 to get another one here. That would work, right? But I kind of am not sure if I want 3. I kind of want to test this out a little bit. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to type in 360 degrees, which is going to put a copy all the way back on top of itself. But that allows me to do the divide and copy command, which puts a bunch in between. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to start moving this. I'm going to let go of my mouse, type in 360 for 360 degrees, press enter. Doesn't look like anything happened, but it put a copy all the way around the circle back on top of itself, which now allows me to say divided by 2. And I'll have 2 of them. Remember, one of them is on top of the original, right? Or I could say divided by 3. Or I could say divided by 20. That would be crazy. Okay? I'm going to go back to divided by 3 because I feel like that's a good number for me. And then then I can select off of it. So I can press the space bar, select tool. And what I just want to show you is that there are 2 on the original location. So press move, grab one and pull it off. So remember I made a copy and brought it all the way around. So there is an extra one there which I can go ahead and just delete and get rid of. And now I have my 3 handles. Fantastic. So let's bring the vase back. I'm going to unhide it. Again, unhide is under Edit, Unhide. You can always do unhide all, and that's what I've been doing as my keyboard shortcut. All right, so there's my water vessel vase thing. I feel pretty good about it so far. Okay. So the next step is we're going to try to create a lid for this. And the lid is going to be a special type of lid where it's not just on top, it also actually goes down inside a little bit to really seal it. Because if this is really a water vessel, we want to make sure it seals down inside. All right, so let me get rid of, I'm going to use spacebar to get the select tool. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. I hold shift to add so I can select multiple things. So now they're all added. I right click and I say hide. So now those are out of the way. Then I'm going to draw my rectangle because I want to draw a lid. I'm going to draw another vertical plane here to draw on. So again, use my arrow keys to find the right plane. That one's pretty good. I'm going to draw this a little bigger than the vase because I'm trying to draw a lid that extends up above the vase. Now if I hide my vase, what's going to be the issue? I don't get the profile, right? I want the profile. So before I hide it, I want to select the rectangle, do the intersect function, right? Intersect faces with the model. That allows geometry to be created on my rectangle. Now I can hide my vase. And I get my profile of my vase. I don't need the whole thing. I really only need the top portion of it. Because I'm going to draw a nice little half profile of the lid. Half profile because we're going to end up using the same follow me tool and sweep it into a circular pattern or circular path. Okay, so now that I have this, I have to think about how this shape is going to take form. If my vase has a lid or has a top part that kind of curves in, I actually can't. So say here, let me draw it. Say this curved in like this instead of going out like mine does. I can't put a cork in here or a lid that goes down in because I won't be able to pull it back out. So if yours is that way, you actually need to not have a lid that extends down in it. So you kind of want to build yours slightly different. Mine, because it tapers as it goes down and there's no overhangs, I can actually create a lid that fits down in it almost like a cork does, like it plugs up the entrance. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down a little ways. I'm not going to go too far. And I'm going to draw a line straight across. I got to find the red axis so I know it's straight across to the midpoint. I can reorient myself to see this a little clearer. I'm going to use this interior surface of the vase as part of my geometry for my lid, and then come back out to here. And then I'm going to draw some kind of funky, oh, no, I didn't want that. Escape. Some kind of cool exterior shape here. Remember, if I keep blue, it'll be nice and smooth. I'm going to do a non-smooth surface here, though. I'm going to kind of make it... Oh, maybe I'll use some straight lines, too. Nice. Now I'm going to draw a line straight across the top. The reason is I want the top of the lid to be a flat surface because I'm going to show you another cool technique that you can use. If I wanted to, I could taper it up like this and have it be kind of cone-shaped on top, but I'm going to show you another technique on how to create a different top. All right, so I'm going to draw a line straight across the red axis so I have a nice flat top surface. And now I only care about spacebar for select tool. I only care about this middle profile. Everything else I can get rid of. Again, the fastest way to get rid of everything is to delete anything that's attached to it, that's touching it, right? So just the segments that are touching. And then anything else, if I triple click, it selects everything else, which is nice, and press delete. So that helps me get rid of things a lot faster. So now I have a profile that I can sweep in a circle using the follow me tool to create 3D geometry. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the vase. I'm going to create a circle on the bottom here. Doesn't matter how big. because I want this to match my vase, remember when I created the vase circle, I had 24 sides in the circle and I changed it to 48. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to select the outside edge of the circle, right click, go to entity info. The dialog box pops up, go to segments, change that to 48, enter. Nice and smooth circle now. I can close that dialog box so it's not in the way. Now I use my follow me tool. Super fast technique. Click the outside edge of the circle, click on the follow me tool, click on the profile. It automatically gets created. I'm going to erase, E for erase my circle. You'll notice the bottom probably is missing a surface. Yep. How do I heal that? Draw a line across, erase the line, and now I have a complete solid here. I can always test it, but first I want to reverse the faces, right, because it's gray. Select everything. I triple click to select everything. Right click, go down to reverse faces. Awesome. Right click, go down to make a group. So now it's a group, and I can test to see if it's a solid. Entity info, solid group. I feel good about that. That's awesome. And now I have my lid. Let's unhide everything, just kind of see what it looks like. It's actually going to make it look like my my vase has no, it's like has a solid top, but that's because I have the lid on it. So let me unhide everything, take a look at kind of what it looks like. And I feel pretty good about that. I kind of want it to be more ornate. I want to have more details up top, so I'm going to add more details. So I'm going to go ahead and hide everything again. I just did undo because I unhid everything. So if I undo the unhide, it hides everything, right? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to edit this by add some detail up top here. It is a group, so I can't just start drawing on it. Otherwise, it'll be separate from this geometry. So I have to double click to edit the group. Now I'm in the group, you can tell because it's got a gray dotted line around the outside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this top surface. I'm going to use, for example, the offset tool. It's right below follow me, offset tool. I'm going to offset this. The reason I do that is because instead of drawing a circle, it just makes it easier to find the center. Otherwise, I might have a hard time finding the center. And so it offsets at a certain distance, like maybe to here. And then what I can do is select this inner circle and move it. If I hit the move, M for move, it will naturally want to move it on the plane that it's on. So if I use the arrow keys again, I can lock it to a new plane, like the vertical plane, and I can move this up. Now I could have drawn this in the first place, right? I could have drawn an angled thing, which is kind of cool. So I can do it in a bunch of different ways. But what I can also do is do this in a way that's a little bit more complicated. Like say I want to put, let's try an octagon or something like that. So I got to find the center of this. One way to do it is to try to draw lines across and make sure that I'm in the center. It's kind of hard to find, but I think I did that in the center. That allows me to find the center point of that, which puts me in the center of the whole object. There's my object. I'm going to use E for erase, get rid of that line now. Select this, right click, entity info. It says 8 segments, which is weird because the reason it's 8 segments is because I had that line drawn across in the middle, which is kind of silly and frustrating. Oh, maybe that's my issue. Huh. Let's actually do that. I'm going to undo, and I'm going to undo that. I'm actually going to draw a point out there. So let's do that. Let me draw. I'm going to use my measure tool. I'm going to draw out from that point and find the middle of this. There's the midpoint. So now it's drawn a line there, and I'm going to do the same thing in this direction. Draw a line there. And then, let me draw a different angle. There we go. So now I have 2 lines, and I can erase the original. The reason I'm doing this is because it looked like by drawing a line there, I subdivided my hexagon. So now I can find the center and draw my hexagon, and it should keep it a hexagon. Remember I did the entity info and it said it had 8 sides? Now I should do entity info, and I should get 6 sides. Good, that's exactly what I wanted. So I didn't subdivide by having that line drawn through it. The other way is to just make sure the line goes through the endpoints, and that will help. But now that I have this, which is great, I'm going to erase my guidelines because I don't need them anymore, is I can take this and move it. Select M for move. It's not going up, so I got to press the arrow keys up key, and I can move it up. So this didn't solve it in a super great way, right? It has these big notches here. It would have been nicer if it solved it a little bit easier, a little bit better of a way. So maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll change this to have more sides. Maybe it'll do a better job. Entity info. Oops, I gotta select just the outside edge. Segments. Maybe let's go to 12. And then let's try to move this. Select it. M for move. Up arrow. Yeah, it's still kind of having trouble. I was hoping that it would actually grab points from all the outside things, because then I could create a really cool top. But that's still, it's kind of fun. I can always add more by drawing more lines here to create more geometry if I want to. It just takes a while to do it, so I probably won't end up doing it for you guys. But if you wanted to, you can go ahead and draw lines from all these facets, and it will create geometry. See how it's creating surfaces? This just takes a while to do. I don't know if it's worth doing. But the idea here is that you can create really ornate lids to this by using the move tool and stuff like that. The other places that you'll use a move tool is maybe you're creating geometry like a house structure and you want to create a roof. You can simply draw a line down it and move the line up. So there I created a smoother shape up here. Let me click off. So my example would be, say I take a house, I'm making a house, use the P for push tool, bring it up, L for line tool, draw a line across, M for move tool, grab the center line and move it up. It's hard to move it straight up, so I can find the blue axis, or I just use my arrow key. Up allows me to lock it. So now I can create a nice peak to the house pretty easily. So you may want to end up doing that. You can move different things. Move this down, move this over. Right? You can create a bunch of different weird shapes that way. All right, let's take a look at our vase. What have we done so far? Unhide everything. And there is my vase. So what I would probably do here is try to clean up the rest of this. I would probably add more geometry there. I could use any of my other commands to create other things on it. So I created a handle and then I copied it around. Maybe I want to create like a little rim on the side here and have that swoop all the way around, or little nubs on it to decorate it. That would be kind of cool. The other thing I could do is paint it, right? Use the paint tool. And what you'll see happens is I get this dialog box that allows me to select all kinds of cool things. So like glass, for example. Select glass. I can change the color of the glass. Let's see if I can change the color. Oh, it allows me to change translucent glass gold. That's kind of cool. Let me look here and see if I can find. I can pick colors. It's kind of neat. Interesting. So I can change the colors of stuff, and I can end up painting this. If I select the vase now, it'll paint everything because it's a group, right? So there we go. It painted everything. I don't love that. I'm actually going to go back to a more transparent one, and I can see right through it. That's kind of neat. If I don't like these edges, I can go to my view, edit view, down to edge style, and just hide the edges. It makes things just look smoother, more natural. But if I want to paint individual parts, like say up here, I actually want to double click so that I can get into the actual object, so that I can paint just portions of it. So like I can paint just the rim of this color, and then maybe paint this top surface a different color. And the problem with each of these facets will be their own color. So maybe I have to select all of those, then try to paint them. Paint tool. There we go. So now I can paint the whole top a different color than the bottom. Nice. I'm going to bring my edges back just because when I'm designing I like to be able to see the edges. And then I can erase them later if I want to print the picture. So you can kind of play around with different materials and change the materials for the handles and the lid and things like that all you want. Alright, so that is pretty much it for creating our vase. We got to use a bunch of tools in this. These tools hopefully will be useful to you moving forward. We used the push-pull a little bit. We kind of talked about it. We used the follow me tool. That one was very useful to us. We used the offset tool to shell out things. And then we used the rotate tool to make copies and create them and with rotation, with radial symmetry, right? To make the handle all the way around. That's it. Thank you guys for watching and good luck. Let me know if you have questions.